Hello, and welcome to the third and final part of episode 22, of KRAD COVID readings. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, and this is the final part of Ragnarok and Roll, the title story in Ragnarok and Roll, Tales of Cassie Zukav, Weirdness Magnet, part of my cycle of urban fantasy stories set in Key West, Florida, featuring a young woman named Cassie Zukav. This is actually the first of the Cassie in Key West stories that I did. I'd done one story with Cassie back in 1997, back when she was still living in San Diego. It appeared in the anthology Urban Nightmares and was called How You Can Prevent Forest Fires. That's actually reprinted in here as well. And then after that, in 2011, I did a story called Ragnarok and Roll, which I've been reading here, which appeared in Tales from the House Band, Volume 1. I subsequently did a whole bunch more stories, which have appeared in all sorts of different places, including buzzymag.com, one of the Badass Fairies anthologies, one of the TV Gods anthologies, one of the Out of Tune anthologies, in a Baker's Dozen of Magic, which was a reprint from when it appeared on the Story of the Month Club subscription website, which has since ceased to continue, but the anthology is still available. It's called the Baker's Dozen of Magic. The anthology Unearthed, and so on. So there's lots of nifty stories. I've recently crowdfunded, and I should have mentioned this in the other two parts, and you can still support crowdfund on Indiegogo for a new story called Ragnarok in a Hard Place, which is sort of the sequel to Ragnarok and Roll. It's that, as well as a Dragon Precinct story called The Gorvangan Rampages. And even though the funding period is done, you can still actually support it. If you go to my website at DeCandido.net, there's a link at the bottom of the page to the Indiegogo campaign. Please feel free to do that, and then you can get that story. Anyway, here is the conclusion to Ragnarok and Roll. The man you know as Gunnar Rickardsson is in fact the trickster Loki. He is my blood brother. I am Odin, the Allfather of the Aesir, and we do not have much time. I remembered some of what I saw online when I was doing my search on Jotunheim's name. Hang on. Loki? Odin? You're a Norse god. Of course. Right, because that's the most natural thing in the world. I sighed. Says the woman being snowed on in April while on her way to the room she shares with a ghost. Okay, fine. Let's get in out of the cold and you can tell me all about Loki and his evil plan. Pulling my keys out, I walked past Odin up the stairs while he started to explain himself. Fimbulvetter is the eternal winter, and is the first stage of Ragnarok. Soon Loki will be powerful enough to sunder Yggdrasil, the world tree that binds the 9 worlds together. I unlocked and slid open the door, only to be greeted by Captain Botroff. You should heed what this person says, Miss Zukav. At that, I almost dropped the space heater onto my foot. I did drop my keys onto the white carpeted floor. You're kidding, right? The guy whose favorite epithet is Mary, Mother of God, is telling me to listen to the pagan deity? I still believe in the Lord God and his Savior Jesus Christ, as I did in life. But the afterlife has taught me that there is more to the world than I could have imagined. I have learned that there are other gods, and they cannot be labeled false, as the vicars of my youth insisted. Therefore, yes, I do believe that you should listen to what this person has to say. Your friend's shade speaks the truth, Odin said as he took a seat in my white wicker chair. Jesus fuck, it's cold. I plugged in the space heater and turned it on, standing as close to it as I could while rubbing my goosebump-covered arms. Fine, so Gunnar is really Loki. How'd he get to this point? Odin had a sonorous voice that was well suited to storytelling, and I found myself almost mesmerized by his tale. Loki tricked Hodor into killing Balder in an attempt to bring about Ragnarok, the end of all that is. But he failed, and he was punished. Loki was trapped in a cave with a serpent dripping poison onto his face forevermore. However, Loki's wife, Sigyn, remained loyal to him and held a bowl to catch the poison before it struck him. Unfortunately, she had to periodically empty the bowl, and when she did so, the poison struck Loki's face, and his convulsions shook the very earth. Okay, I said. Why didn't she just have 2 bowls? That brought Odin up short. I do not know. You would have to ask her that. He shook his head. Regardless, Loki managed to free himself from his prison. But gods are only as powerful as their worshippers. When the peoples of the Scandinavian region believed in us, our power was at its zenith. But in time, the Aesir were forgotten, given over for other gods. Today, we are little more than an academic curiosity or fodder for popular fiction. Our end was prophesied to come about via Ragnarok, but instead, we simply faded. Not with a bang, but a whimper, huh? I shook my head, the space heater having managed to finally get my blood actually circulating again. Okay, fine, so you all faded away. Save for a few of us. I still live, obviously, as does one of the frost giants, KRAD, who is loyal to Loki. I believe you had an encounter with him. What, the lunatic outside the bull? He's a frost giant? Indeed. So why the hell do you want to kill me? Odin stared at me with his one eye. Loki sent KRAD to kill you because he sees you as a potential threat. As one of the Disir, you are immune to his glamour, and one of the few who can stop him. My eyes widened. Excuse me? I'm one of the what now? The Disir. The fate goddesses. The Norns are Disir, and periodically a set of triplets is born on Midgard who are also Disir. You are one of three, are you not? Now my heart was pounding against my ribcage. Yes, Mom had triplets, but Paul's and my never-named brother was stillborn. I found myself with the need to sit down. The heater had only just started to warm up the room, but I no longer felt the cold, or really much of anything. I planted myself on the edge of the bed, since Odin was in my only chair. In a very quiet voice, I said, "Yes, I'm a triplet. Just so. Why do you think you are able to speak with this shade, or survive an encounter with a frost giant?" Before I could elaborate on the role that two other people played in my driving KRAD off, Batroff finally spoke up again. If such is the reason behind our ability to communicate, Miss Zukav, then I, for one, am filled with gratitude. I stared at the captain. In 9 months, that was the nicest thing he'd said to me. Unable to entirely parse this, I forced myself to focus on the point at hand. Okay, hold it. The band's using magic, right? Odin nodded. Loki is using a glamour, yes, to make his music more appealing. It is a minor glamour, not strong enough to affect me as the Allfather, nor you as a Dis. He was unable to revive worshipful interest in the Aesir. Our time has passed. The Christians were little more than conquering fodder for Vikings in our heyday, but now you are everywhere. I held up my hands. Don't look at me. I'm Jewish. I sighed. All right, so he formed a rock band. Figures fan dedication's probably stronger than a church would be anyhow. So why here? Why Key West? Because, as I said, the next step is to sunder Yggdrasil. And one of the roots of the World Tree is the ficus around which the saloon on Green Street is built. I put my head in my hands. Of course it is. So fine, how do we stop him? There is a counterspell that may be cast while Loki casts the spell to sunder the World Tree. He will cast it tomorrow night. Fimbulvetter must last for at least a day before he may attempt it. You must cast this counterspell. Whoa! I stood up. You're the Allfather, the big badass of Norse myth. I'm just a tall chick with bad hair. Why aren't you casting the spell? Loki is my blood brother, and we swore never to harm each other. You, however, have made no such vow, and as a Dis, you can easily cast the spell. Oh, I can I? This was getting insane. Insane. Yes. He rose to his feet. I must depart. I will return in the morning with the components you will need to cast the spell, and instructions on how to cast it. Okay, but I've never cast a spell before. Odin slid the door open. You are a Dis. You will be able to. With that, he left. Okay then, I told the closed door. I turned to the captain. You really believe this? I believe that it is snowing heavily, a phenomenon I have never encountered in a century and a half. I believe that these musicians you have described are enchanting the good people of this island. I believe you were attacked by a vicious monster. I believe that the gentleman who just departed has a notion as to the reason for these occurrences, and also the method by which they may be rectified. So you're saying I should see this through? Yes. Yes, I do. I collapsed on the bed. Yeah, me too. My dreams that night were filled with random images of Bobby and Jaina in a catfight, Gunnar giving Bulwark the finger while standing on Mayor Fred's stage, the Gulf of Mexico totally frozen over, but Kara and Andy still trying to dive in it, Gerard shooting Leo in the chest with a big shotgun, Ginny, Chet, and the rest of the crowd at Mayor Fred's giving Jotunheim a standing ovation, and a bunch more. When I woke up, I frowned. Ginny wasn't into Jotunheim. How was she unaffected? I put on the sneakers I hadn't worn since December and the long pants I hadn't worn since I arrived on the island and put them on. The snow was still coming down and piling up in the garden. Seriously, this is the first time my legs weren't exposed to the open air in 9 months. What a fucking nightmare, I muttered. This is going to cripple the island. We don't have salt, we don't have plows. Hell, most of the people who live here don't own socks. I trudged through the snow to the main house in order to get some of Debbie's killer coffee. Several guests were in the dining room, scared and subdued. Nobody knew what to do, and probably the whole island was shutting down. I had a text on my phone from Kara saying that Seaclips was closed, to my lack of surprise. I doubted that any business was going to be open. Besides, how were deliveries supposed to get here on unpassable roads? Then again, the world was going to end tonight anyhow. I trudged through the frozen tundra back to my cottage with an entire pot of coffee, and then fired up my laptop to do a little online research before Odin came back. Sure enough, Norse mythology tracked frighteningly well with everything Odin said, and the whole eternal winter thing. When Odin arrived, he had the spell components: a bunch of really stinky herbs, a mortar and pestle, an electric mini-stove, and a familiar-looking lizard scale. You took that from the tail thingy we found last week. Indeed. It is from the Midgard serpent, the creature that surrounds your world. That it has allowed itself to be seen is another omen of Ragnarok's imminence. Joy. Spent the entire day in my room with Odin and Captain Botroff going over how to cast the spell. Apparently I had to get the mix of herbs just right, say the incantation precisely in a language I totally didn't know or recognize, and time it exactly to when Loki cast his spell, which would be him singing a song with a set of lyrics in the same weird language as my spell. But no pressure. Debbie managed to provide enough food for me and Odin, as well as the other guests, though she wasn't sure what she was going to do Saturday since there weren't going to be any deliveries. That night, I drove to Mayor Fred's. Duval Street was eerily not crowded. A bunch of hardy souls were trudging through the snowdrifts to the few bars that decided to open up, which was maybe a quarter of them. Rocinante was able to slowly plow its way through the snow, and when we turned the corner onto Green, I just parked right across the street. I couldn't park right in front because it was packed with people. Even though the snow was still coming down, hundreds of people were trying to cram into Mayor Fred's. But this time, there was a clear path from one part of the entryway, past the ficus, to the stage. That meant I had a clear line of sight, though I'm pretty sure it was so Loki had that same line of sight. Ginny Blake was in with the crowd outside, and when she saw me and Odin climb out of the truck, she walked right over. I was about to ask her what she was doing here, but she wasn't paying any attention to me. She stared at my companion. "Hello, Odin." "Greetings, Sigyn." "Son of a bitch. You're Loki's wife? The one not bright enough to have two bowls?" Ginny frowned. "Excuse me? Never mind. No wonder you're immune to his glamour." She smiled. "What wife can't see through her husband? In any event, after spending eternity protecting him from that serpent, he repaid my loyalty by abandoning me when the cave collapsed and he was freed. So I have followed him in the hopes of watching him fail." She turned to Odin. "I assume you are here to expedite that failure, old father?" "Not I. I swore an oath not to harm my blood brother, and I will not go back on it." Ginny's eyes widened. "You mean there's a chance he'll succeed?" I sighed. "Hope not. I'm casting the spell." Staring at Odin, Ginny asked, "Are you out of your mind? She is a novice." "She is a Dece. She can cast the spell." Odin's voice was absolutely flat. "I don't care if she's one of the Norns. She's never done this before. The fate of all the 9 worlds is at stake, and you're risking it on a promise you made to him?" Odin stared at her with his one eye. "Yes." Ihor's voice sounded over the PA. "Welcome to Snowpocalypse, ladies and gentlemen." "You don't know the half of it," I muttered. "Tonight and every night, it's Jotunheim!" The crowd cheered like crazy. This time I could see them. Same short, blonde, muscular guy up front, same other 3, plus Jaina on stage right behind her usual keyboard setup of a stand-up piano and 2 sets of electric keyboards. They opened with an old Jethro Tull song called Hunting Girl that used to be an 1812 standard. While they played the song, and I wondered why Jaina was going around throwing her old band's music for these guys to play, I started putting together what I needed for the spell. As the song spiraled to a finish, Loki held up a hand. "All right, I need some quiet for this next one." As he spoke, Jaina started to play a quiet, dirge-like melody, very low on the keys, sent to organ mode. Slowly, the crowd started to quiet down, until there was total silence. Something, I gotta say, I'd never heard in this part of Key West before. Not even at 4 after the bars closed. save for Jaina's organ playing. Then Loki began to sing a song in a language I didn't recognize. Except I did recognize it. Odin had been giving me the words all day. I lit the mixture in the pestle, dropped the scale from the Midgard serpent into the flames that licked up from it, then started a chant of my own. I had no idea what the words meant, but I'd been practicing them all day until Odin was ready to kill me, and I him, believe me. And damn it, I was going to say them right. Even as I said the words, I could feel, well, something pulling at my chest. Loki saw me standing at the entryway. Everyone else in the bar was mesmerized by the music, and didn't even notice me standing there with a flaming pestle in my hand. He finished what sounded like a verse of his chant, then looked at me with obvious annoyance. I was wondering where KRAD got off to. Can't even kill a Dees. Can't find good help these days, it seems. I just kept chanting. Maybe he could afford to do his spell piecemeal, but I wasn't risking it. The pull on my chest got weaker as I went, which I hoped was a good sign. But there's nothing you can do, little Dees. Oh, if Allfather was doing what you're doing, I'd be doomed, but he won't harm me. His insistence on keeping his word is so charmingly old-fashioned, isn't it? Then he sang another verse, and the pulling on my chest grew worse. Sweat beaded on my brow, even though it was so fucking cold. I had come here wishing I had something thicker than a denim jacket, and now I was wishing I thought to throw it off before I started casting the spell. The pull grew stronger, like someone had reached into my ribcage and was trying to yank my heart out through it. I kept chanting. Wasn't about to miss anything. Haven't you learned anything, Loki? That was Ginny, who my peripheral vision told me was standing just behind me and to my left. Sigyn! This time Loki cut off in mid-verse. The pull on my chest disappeared, and I kept the chant up, louder this time. Yes, Loki, I'm still alive, and you are about to fail to bring about Ragnarok again, just as you did last time. Oh, and you can rest assured, I will not be there to stay the poison from your brow again. I won't need it, dear wife of mine, Loki snapped angrily. He sang the next verse, and the pull grew worse. Thanks a lot, Jenny. If you're trying to distract him, that totally didn't work. Suddenly, just as a hand touched my shoulder, the pull stopped. The words, which were a bitch and a half to pronounce right even after a day's practice, were now coming easily, as if it was a language I'd spoken all my life. And Loki stumbled on the stage. You're going against your word, old man? Loki asked with a sneer. Only then did I realize who was touching my shoulder. Yes, was all Odin said in response. We are blood brothers! You swore an oath, Allfather! And now I am breaking it, as you broke yours many times. What good is my word if existence ends because I held it? What good is existence if your word while living in it means nothing? When I finally got to the end of the chant, I decided to answer Loki's question before taking the final step. Words ain't no good if the music sucks. I threw the pestle at the ficus. It sparked and shattered, yellow flames shooting out in all directions. The pull on my chest increased and I fell to the floor. Loki collapsed on the stage. Wind whipped through Mayor Fred's, a cold, bitter wind that the body heat of hundreds of people couldn't warm. It blew out the flames caused by my shattered pestle. Then the entire world went white, as if we were all suddenly buried in a snowdrift. I heard voices. Loki's, Odin's, Sigyn's. I had no idea what they were saying, but I heard them as I lay there on Mayor Fred's floor, unable to move. I struggled to get up, but whatever force had been pulling on my chest all this time was keeping me from moving now. After several seconds of struggle, I closed my eyes, shivering from the bitter cold. When I opened them, I was in my bed. Captain Botroff's ghost was standing over me. At last you awaken. Even one with your prodigious ability to slumber should not be in such a state for so many days. I swallowed. Days? I sat up, realized I was still in the outfit I wore to Mayor Fred's on Friday night, minus the denim jacket, which was hanging on the back of the wicker chair. Yes, it is now Sunday. I will fetch the gentleman. He wanted to know when you awakened. A breeze and the captain was gone. I sat up slowly, stomach growling. Looking out the window, I saw that the sun was shining and there was no sign of snow. I could see the garden clearly, though some of the flowers seemed to be missing. I guess they got frosted to death or something. First thing I did was get out of bed. That took longer than it should have, as pins and needles shot through my legs and I had to stand at the side of the bed, hand braced on the mattress, for several seconds before I felt confident enough to actually walk. My arms and legs felt like they were made of jello as I shakily pulled my shirt over my head. Removing my bra proved an act of dexterity almost beyond my means, and I sat back down on the bed, not trusting myself to remove my pants while upright. By the time Odin showed at the sliding door, I'd managed to get into a bathrobe. I cursed the fact that my bathroom only had a shower stall, since what I really needed was a long bath. For one thing, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stand in the shower for more than a minute or two without collapsing. He slid the door open. "It is good to see you well." "Well is a relative term, but I'm alive. I guess it worked?" "Yes," Odin nodded. "I have accepted responsibility for Loki and KRAD." I frowned. "What does that mean exactly?" "No Midgard jail may hold either of them, and your enforcement officials cannot arrest someone who does not actually exist." Nodding, I said, "Yeah, okay, good point." "I must take my leave of you, Caster Lisbeth Zukav." I winced again. "Will you stop that, please? It's Cassie." For the first time since I met him, Odin smiled. "Very well, Cassie. I hope you continue to use your gifts as a Dis wisely." I didn't even know I had gifts. Batrov spoke up then. "Yes, you did. And rest assured, sir, that I will endeavor to keep Miss Zukov on the proper path." "You have got to be kidding me." I put my hands on my hips and stared at the captain, but I was smiling. "Be well, Cassie." And with that, Odin departed. My cell phone had been in my pants pocket and had long since lost its charge. I plugged it in to find it had a dozen messages. Half were from Bobby. I called her back and we filled each other in on what had been going on. Well, as much of it as I was willing to talk about in a phone call. Bobby had become a dear friend in the past 9 months, and if there was anyone I could talk to about being a Dis, it was her, but not now. Eventually, we got around to talking about 1812. Mayor Fred's actually asked us back. Without Gunnar, Jotunheim has just sucked. We're starting tonight. As a trio or a quartet? Bobby hesitated for several seconds. "Don't know yet. Jaina and I..." She sighed. "We got some stuff to work out." I didn't know what to say. Jaina's quitting wasn't entirely her fault, thanks to Loki's glamour. On the other hand, nobody else at 1812 quit and joined Jotunheim. That was something else those two were going to have to figure out. We promised to have lunch the next day to catch up in more detail, and I promised to tell her everything. Then I called C-Clips and worked out my schedule going forward. I told Andy that I wasn't up to working today, but I'd be okay tomorrow. That night, after a not nearly long enough shower in which I did not fall down, and a huge meal provided by Debbie, I went to Mayor Fred's. Jaina wasn't on the stage, but Chet, Bobby, and Ginny were. I took a seat near the ficus tree. I suddenly felt protective of it. I ordered a pint of beer, and Ihor came over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, back after a brief absence, Mayor Fred's favorites, 1812. Bobby walked up to her mic. "Good evening, Key West. This one's for our biggest fan." And then Chet walked up to his mic. He wore sunglasses, like usual, so I couldn't tell where exactly he was looking, but I chose to believe he was staring right at me when he started singing their first song. I Put a Spell on You. The end. That story is available, as I said, in Ragnarok and Roll, Tales of Cassie Zukav Weirdness Magnet, which is available from any online retailer you care to name, published by Plus One Press. Eventually, there will be a second collection called Ragnarok in a Hard Place. The title story for that collection will be written soon. It's been crowdfunded, and you can still support the crowdfund on Indiegogo. There is a link at DeCandido.net, so check that out. There's also a link there to this channel, so you can subscribe to it, although you're watching this, so you're probably already there. And if you're watching this embedded somewhere else, well, then go over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. DeCandido.net also links to all my other social media, including my blog, which is at DeCandido.wordpress.com. The pinned post in that blog has a guide to all my Cassie Zukav fiction, so you can find all 15 or however many stories I've done. And you can also support me on Patreon, patreon.com/KRAD, which has all sorts of cool stuff, including TV and movie reviews, cat pictures, excerpts from work in progress, first looks at my first drafts of short stories and chapters of novels, and, best of all, vignettes featuring my original characters. There's about a half dozen Cassie stories there now, and there will be more to come. Thank you very much for watching, and please, please, please stay safe.